Welcome back to another episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all about email marketing, and I brought on expert Kieryn Wong to talk all about that. So, Kieryn, welcome aboard. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk email marketing. I am an email marketer. I support folks who maybe don't know as much or are intimidated or think it has to be this difficult marketing channel. And I'm really here to tell you that it's not. It actually can be a lot easier than you ever imagined. So I hope you walk away from this episode feeling that way.
I love that. And I feel like there's so much that goes into email marketing that so many people don't even like scratch the surface on. I'd love to know though. So, how did you get into email marketing? And tell us a little bit more about kind of like the services that you do.
Yeah, so I actually got started as I think a lot of folks our age did in social media, right? So like if you work in marketing these days, you probably have dabbled in social media at some point, probably being the youngest person at the company that you worked at. And just because I focus on email doesn't mean I don't love social. And I say this all the time. I'm like, they should be working together. Everything should be working together. It shouldn't just be email. But I did realize that you have a little less control on social because you're at the whim of the algorithm, and who even knows how that really works at the end of the day. And it's always changing and it's always transforming, and sometimes it gets shut down, and sometimes your account gets shut down, and there are just so many things that are out of your control with social media. Not that I don't love, but I think with email, the reason why I was so drawn towards it is because you just have someone who's releasing her need for control. But I do like email because you have a lot more agency over what you share, how you share it, what it looks like. And yeah, that's really sort of my biggest sales pitch for why you should consider email as well.
And when it comes to emails too, like people end up on your list because they opted in at some point. So it's people who like genuinely want to hear from you versus, the algorithm is kind of sometimes random. You're like, why am I getting this content? Like, don't get me wrong, I love dogs, but this has nothing to do with weddings. So why am I getting this on my wedding account? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like more curated and more hot leads and people who actually are choosing and like wanting to see a lot of what you're posting or like sharing versus, oh, the algorithm posts it, but then the story expires after 24 hours or, the feed is only live and people are only seeing what you're posting on the feed within, 2 days and then it's
Hmm.
gone. So I love that. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about just kind of like what you've seen in terms of maybe some misconceptions that people have about email marketing or things that you think people who maybe aren't doing it, like why they should really consider leaning more into email marketing.
Yeah, the biggest one, actually, I've been talking about this a lot lately, is that people think that emails have to be this like beautiful long form content and it has to be done perfectly for it to be effective. And I mean, sure, if you want beautiful long form content, go for that, but it doesn't have to be that way if you don't want. So, one of my favorite newsletters is one sentence long. One sentence, one link. And I tune in every single day because I'm like, what is this one sentence going to help me with today? And no one, literally not a single person. I haven't done the research, but I know this for a fact. No one has ever unsubscribed because your email was too short. Right. So definitely take a little bit of that pressure off yourself when you're thinking about email marketing. Cause I think a lot of people are like, it's just so scary. And, and it really actually can just be your social media translated into email form. If that makes it seem a little less like daunting to you.
Totally. And it's just like a more direct line to your ideal clients or to the people that you're kind of like building in this community. So, yeah, no, I love that. And so, for people who don't have an email list, or maybe they have one, but it's just like feeling really stuck in terms of growing, what would you say are some places that people can start with? Like, if they're starting from scratch or maybe just feeling stuck, like, how can they grow their email list?
Hmm. The very first thing I always say is, how many people know you have an email list? Are you telling people that you have a newsletter? Are you telling people to subscribe? And more than just like one time, are you consistently reminding people to sign up? Are you consistently telling people And then also making it easy to find. If you make it difficult to find, then people are going to give up and they're not going to give you their email. But we're trying to, at the very least, capture that email so that we can, contact them, nurture them, help them learn who you are and trust who you are so that they're ready to give you their money. And some ways to do that, I know some people like to do like a discount on services or on their product or whatever it is, but especially for photographers, especially for service providers, there are so many wonderful lead magnet ideas, like educational little tidbits that you can share. Think of it almost like a digital product where it's like maybe a guide to posing or a checklist for your wedding day or whatever it is. That's something that either helps them save time, B helps them solve a problem, or C just shares like maybe your unique perspective on your services, any sort of struggles that your customers may be going through. So use a lead magnet and entice people instead of paying you $5 for it or $1 for it. They're paying you with their email, which is infinitely more valuable.
I love that, and I think that makes total sense, and just, like, growing your contacts and making sure that you're able to serve them and nurture them and have a reason for them to opt in, and I feel like that's so true too about just, like, what you were saying earlier about not being afraid to talk about it. I think so often people get so nervous about talking about what they have to offer or even talking about that they have an email list or whatever it is because they just feel like people don't need to hear this more than once, but again, when you're getting them onto your email list, it's like you're kind of, victim to the algorithm, and like less than 5% of people are actually seeing what you're posting if you're using Instagram. So you have to be talking about it more than once because people aren't actually seeing what you're talking about? So it's good.
Yeah, yeah. And even if they're seeing every single time you remind them, they need to see it like it's not 7 times anymore back in the old days of just like TV ads and that kind of thing or radio ads. It's like you have to see it almost 100 times these days to be ready to take action on it. So don't be afraid to say the same thing again and again. Maybe in different ways, packaged differently, but remind people. Don't be afraid to.
Totally. Now, I'd love to talk a little bit more about what to do once you actually get these people onto the email list. So, you talked a little bit about nurturing. I know there's other strategies too of just like keeping them engaged and making sure that they actually become buyers. So, like, people have this email list, right? They're getting people to opt in. What are your strategies? And maybe this is a multi part thing of like actually monetizing that, turning that into paying clients.
Mhm. So if you're thinking about the funnel, I know some people don't want to hear about the sales funnel and the marketing funnel and whatever it is, but the point is that they're going from maybe finding you on social or finding you on some kind of post or ad or someone else's image that you took. Once they find you, you still have to get them to know who you are and trust who you are, right? So, in order to do that, a great way is to continue to share that information through your email list. The very first thing I would recommend is always have a welcome email at the very least. A welcome series, ideally, like ideally at least 3 emails. But that first email is if you have that lead magnet, that wedding checklist, or whatever it is, you deliver it in the first email. And in the second email, I think a lot of people think that a welcome series has to be like an introduction to me as a photographer, as a service provider, as a business owner, which sure, people need that. But in order to really trust you, you have to make it about them, right? At the customer, the client, the person who you want to trust you. Because if you're not addressing their problems, if you're not bringing up how your service or your product solves those problems, what do they need you for, right? Show them tangibly through client examples, testimonials, experiences, whatever it is, that you understand what it is that they may be dealing with, that what they may be looking for when they're hiring a photographer, or they may be looking for when they're choosing someone to give their money to, and then continue to just like kind of chip away at that uncertainty that they have about, oh, is this the right investment or is this the right person to execute the task that I'm looking for? And in that way, setting up that welcome series first and then continuing through your regular newsletter to just be consistent, show up as a friend, and help them solve their problems in their everyday lives.
I think that's so good, and I think those email sequences really do make a difference because, again, we live in an age where I think everyone is just skeptical. We grew up in just an era where, advertising, like, we've been getting advertisements, and how many do we see each day? Like, it used to be, like, hundreds of thousands, now it's in the millions each day, probably more, who knows?
Yeah.
But it's just like, you lose track of how often we're seeing ads, and building trust is so critical because everyone is just a lot more skeptical. They need to build that trust beforehand. And so I love that. And I think having those sequences is great and then getting them onto your newsletter. Now, do you have any tips for building a successful newsletter? Like, how do you know what to talk about, what to include, and how often to send?
Yeah. Okay. Let me tackle those one at a time. So, how often to send? I know some people are like, you should be sending weekly emails. You should be sending da 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 da. To me, it's always however much you can be consistent with. So if you're like, I'm not going to send weekly emails because I just don't have the time for that. I don't care enough, which is a totally fair reason. Just start with once a month. I always say just start where you think you can consistently show up as and show up authentically and show up like with some sense of enthusiasm. And then in terms of content, there are a lot of things. I was talking about this in my membership. Actually, we did this in our March workshop, is that we broke down sort of a bunch of different potential ways that you can use your stories. Like not just the story of you, why you became a photographer or whatever service provider or business that you started. Tell people why you started it. Tell people why you created this product so that they understand a little bit better your reasons behind it and then maybe understand you a little bit better. But also tell the stories of your clients, tell the stories of your customers, the people who have trusted you and who have worked with you. And then even think about your potential customer, the person who's reading these emails. What are they going through? Again, what is a daily struggle, or what is a struggle they have when they're choosing a wedding photographer or planning a wedding or whatever it is, and address those things very, very specifically. But there's so many other ways, like, oh my gosh, I mean, talking about seasonal current events or whatever it is, summer's coming up, spring is happening, what is going, do we go and look at specific venues during certain times of year or whatever it is and what to look out for? And maybe even just like things that are entertaining. Like, did you have a really challenging, I don't know, project recently or challenging day where you were like, oh, so many things went wrong during this shoot? Like, people love to hear that kind of stuff, right? So, honestly, anything and everything can be content. And so, I think take same deal as earlier, take a little bit of that pressure off of yourself and share what is going to come off as exciting to the reader. Because if you're like, I'm writing this email because I have to, that's going to come out in the energy of the email and the energy of your words. So, yeah, just whatever it is that lights you up and that maybe lights your customers up, that's what you should be talking about.
That makes total sense. And I think because, again, just pointing it back to that building trust and really getting them a reason to tune in and a reason to buy from you in the future, it makes sense that these stories matter and like a glimpse into what it's actually like in your shoes and how you serve and, what you care about. Like that all feeds into this whole narrative of like you just being someone who wants to serve them and make it about them. So I love that. And so for people who are kind of like trying to figure out how to manage all of this and make it, sustainable, what would you say are some metrics and ways that they can actually kind of evaluate like what's working and what's not in terms of getting started with email marketing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know that some people hear analytics or hear tracking or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not a numbers person. I don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with that." And that's okay. You don't have to be a numbers person at all. But if you're not really paying attention to what's getting people to open, what's getting people to click, are you seeing? You don't have to be like, "Oh, I know exactly what this number means," but kind of like if you're consistently tracking and paying attention to what's going on, how many people are opening on average, how many people are clicking on average. If you start to see spikes of, oh my gosh, this email did really well, that gives you data, right? It gives you something to understand what your customers are looking for a little more and what's going to, again, get them excited. and send them to your website or send them to your social. Keep them in that ecosystem of your brand and your business. That's all honestly just always a great place to start. And then really just making sure that, yeah, you wanna speak to your customer and you wanna relate to them on a fundamental level. And in order to do that, measuring what they're clicking on and what they're opening on, that just gives you more information about their behavior, and then you can deliver on exactly what they're looking for.
I think that's so great, and especially just, like, on that topic of engagement, I'd love to know your thoughts since you're obviously an expert in this and work with so many people on this, is just what are you seeing in terms of what makes an email most likely to be clicked and engaged with? Like, what are some of those elements that you think make it actually more likely to be engaging?
I am always going to, I think, answer that with a very clear call to action. So, what do I mean by that? It's that you're telling people exactly what you would like for them to do with the information that you're presenting them in this email. And I wouldn't say like too many calls to action. So, for example, if you're trying to get them to book a call with you, or if you're trying to get them to, I don't know, download a guide that you created, or if you're trying to get them to a YouTube video that you created, or whatever it is, don't try to make them do all three of those things in one email. Like, focus on one. I think a lot of the time people are like, oh, I want you to read the blog, and then I also want you to book a call, and then I also want you to do this. And people are like, what do you want? So what do you want me to do? So that's just a great place to start. And make it really clear in your language. Click this button to book a call, or click here, or watch this video now. People are like, oh, explore more, or like learn more. That is not clear enough on on what you want them to do. Like, learn where, do what, right? And then yeah, just things like, don't miss the opportunities of linking as much as possible. So yes, you want one clear call to action, but you can link that in your image. You can link that in the button. You can link that in the text. And I know some people are like, oh, that's not aesthetic for my brand. Like, I don't want like a bunch of text links and da da da, which is fine. That's not what you want to do. Don't do it. And that goes for anything I say here. If you're like, I don't want to do that, then don't do it. That's fine. But just don't like a lot of people don't link their images, and I'm like, you don't know how many of my clients and my own audience click on images. You just don't know. And so if you're not linking them, that's just a missed opportunity to get people to your site, right?
Totally makes sense. And I think it's like a subconscious thing too, because people are like, oh, is this gonna, you're trained to click that. Everyone's gonna click the link on the
Mhm.
image. So I love that. And then is there anything that you would say has ever been too much? Don't do too much of this, or things that have been like off putting in terms of, what people are putting in their newsletters?
Yeah, I mean, don't do too much of the here's my product or here's my service, book it. Don't just do that, I guess is what I'm saying. You want to, I mean, sure, maybe you're running a Black Friday sale and you really want people to book services with you during that time frame. And so you're trying to tell them like, do it now, right? That makes sense. But if all your emails are just like, book a call, book a call, book a call, like, I mean, sure, it's a clear call to action, but you still want to give them the context of like, why should I do that? There are a lot of brands that I work with, more product brands and service brands, where they're just like, here's our product, shop now. And I'm like, are you going to give people any kind of context of what your product does, or like even what it's made of, or like why you made it, or anything? Just give them some context, give them some information about who you are or how you understand them and their needs. Yeah, so I think if being too salesy all the time, too much, is just not the way to go.
And that makes a lot of sense because again, people just don't love being sold to. So how can you do it in that subtle way through a relationship? And on that topic too of just like trust building, I'd love to hear like more experience from your perspective of how you've been able to build community and like lifelong customers through doing email marketing.
Yeah, I think I always try to start conversations with my audience, with my clients' audiences, and open up sort of that like two-way street of communication. So not like, oh, we're going to start an email thread and you're going to respond and we're just going to chat over email. I mean, sure, if that happens, great. But encourage people to tell you what they're looking for or ask you questions, or literally you ask them questions of like, what would be helpful? Would it be helpful to get this kind of information or this kind of information? People love a like this or that, right? Or a poll or a survey or just a prompt of like, actually, even if you don't really take any of that and do anything with it, which obviously is another missed opportunity, but like it literally just the intention of, I want to learn about you and what you're curious about as a potential customer, that energy and that openness to receive, it changes the energy flow and the dynamic between you and your customer. And so just know that you're willing to listen to them and that you're willing to deliver on what you receive from them.
I think that's so great because again, it's like viewing it as a way to serve your clients and serve potential clients and really give them a glimpse of your heart behind things. So if you can find ways to, in that way, nurture them through asking what they need, I think that makes total sense. Because why would you just assume, oh, they want this and nobody's interested in that? Like it's a missed opportunity there when you have this opportunity to ask. So I really love that. Any practical tips though on how to do that? Is it just reply back to this? Is there you do tagging? Like what do you recommend in terms of actually getting people to give that type of feedback?
I love a survey, like just a simple Google form. And it doesn't have to be this long thing. It can be like literally 3 questions long of like their name, their email if you want to be able to contact them, and the answer to a multiple choice or a checkbox or whatever it is of like, hey, what are you looking for? Or hey, how can I serve you better? I always like to start there. And then encouraging, just same as you just said, reply to this and let me know what you think. Or DM us on Instagram. There are other places that you can continue that conversation and foster that community, but you can start it in the email because it's going into their inboxes. And that's something that not everyone, but most people check at least on weekdays. And it feels a little more intimate. It feels a little bit more like, instead of like blasting it out to everyone, you're almost like speaking to a friend and starting a conversation with them.
I think that's so good. Now, we've talked about a lot of things, and I know that there's just like probably a million more things you can share, but as we are kind of wrapping up this episode, I'd love to know what advice would you have for people who are wanting to take action today?
I would say just start, because it doesn't have to be perfect right away. It doesn't have to be perfect ever. One of my favorite pieces of advice I've ever gotten is like, just start, because that's your version 1. It's not your final version. And just starting with a version 1 and just sending what you think would be helpful. Go into your social media posts that do well. What inspiration can you get from that content to build a couple ideas for your newsletter out? Again, your stories, who you are, you know that very well. So you really you don't have to start with this beautiful fleshed out marketing plan or whatever it is and a million ideas. Like, just start with one idea and go from there, because it doesn't need to be scary at all.
That's so good. And especially just with taking that first step, you're never going to get it perfect on the first try. So you might as well get your rough drafts out of the way and get going and actually get to the good
Exactly.
stuff.
Exactly.
Well, man, this has been so good, Kieran. And for anyone who's been listening and maybe they want to learn more or connect with you, where can they find you and what types of things do you offer?
Yeah, you can always find me on Instagram at ITSALLMOST. I spell almost with 2 L's, so I always it's just phonetically spell that out. And you can also find me during our membership. Each month we talk about a different email marketing subject, and I go through it and I walk you through it. I hold your hand. We have an implementation session. We have Q&A. I'm available 24/7 in our members area. So if you really just don't know where to start and you want to be able to have a nice, accessible, affordable way to work with me, I would love to have you in the membership. And as a free gift, as a thank you for having me on, I do have a really wonderful analytics tracker that I use for myself, that I use for my clients. And it's a great place to start. I have a full tutorial video on how to use it, how to read your analytics and everything. If you don't know where to start, those are really, really great places too.
I love that. So good. Well, we'll have everything linked below. So again, if you're listening, you're like, man, I'm ready to start. I'm ready to do this today. Please check out the links below. And that's a great place to start. So, Kieryn, thank you so much just for everything you shared today. For everyone listening, we'll see you next week.